Hi, and welcome to Getting Biblical, the show where I drink too much and talk about my favorite Bible stories. I am Matt Smith, your host, and thank you for joining us today. So, we are on the cusp of my favorite secular holiday of the whole year. Of course, I'm talking about Halloween. We did a Halloween episode last year. That was the first anniversary Halloween show or whatever. Just like The Simpsons does the was it Treehouse of Terror or whatever it is they're doing. I love this holiday so much that I can't help but recognize it, every single year. So we'll do as many episodes as we can every time it comes around. So this is Halloween episode number 2. And so last year for episode 1 of Halloween things, we did kind of a hodgepodge of the spookiest, the scariest, sort of kind of tongue-in-cheek stories around the Bible. And they covered like demon possession, stuff like that. And like the best one was probably the creepy possessed guy that lived in a graveyard for a bunch of years, and then Jesus just happened upon him and cast out all the demons out of his body, and they all like flew into some nearby pigs who all ran off a cliff and drowned themselves. And that was probably like the best story of last year. So that was pretty great. We wanted to switch it up, do something different. And also, like, there's not a lot of super great like Halloween related content in the Bible, so we're trying to stretch it a little bit, but we're gonna do our best. Today we're talking about my 5 favorite zombies of the Bible. Now, of course, I'm using the term very loosely here. There aren't actually the reanimated dead or the shambling hoard, the people or the walking dead looking to eat brains of people. Those are not in the Bible. So we're using it very loosely. I'm talking about people that died and then were brought back to life. Right? Not with no palate for brain eating or anything like that, but just they died and they came back to life. So there's actually a total of 9 or so instances of this happening to individuals in the Bible, not including prophetic ones or like poetic, like, that type of thing. Not talking about the future, revelations, none of that crap. We're just talking about like individuals, like mostly like named or like this person at this time, whatever, died and then got brought back, that type of thing. There's like 9 of those, and that's a lot. And I don't want to go through all of them because some of them are kind of run of the mill, which is really a weird thing to say about people that died and came back to life. Like, oh. 4 out of these 9, like, they're boring to talk about. Like, they're not very interesting. Like unless we're talking about comic books here, like a Marvel or DC or whatever, where anyone who ever dies is not dead for too long, unless you're Uncle Ben, right? Isn't that the mantra? So, but there's a couple that are just like, oh, and this person died, and then they're like, boom, come back to life, and they came back to life. So we're gonna skip 4 of them, and we're just gonna talk about my top favorite 5. But before we do that, of course, let's talk about what I'm drinking today. So for today's episode, I actually was trying to overlap my responsibilities, if we could say that, things that I needed to do this week. And one thing that I needed to do was record this week's episode, right? Of course, here we are, huzzah. The other thing that I needed to do on my list of my to-do list for this week was I wanted to create a specialty cocktail, a themed drink for my upcoming Halloween party. So every year I host this really big Halloween party, and a bunch of people come out. It's a big to do. So it's just this really cool creative outlet, this thing that I do, and get to just have a great atmosphere and good vibes and have a good time with the people that I care about in life. So So that's coming up, and I wanted to create a signature cocktail, a drink for it. And this year, for this year's party, I am really into Pennywise the Clown from Stephen King's It. Of course, the one way back in the 90s or whatever, with Tim Curry. It's a whole different kind of animal, but this new one, the chapter 1, chapter 2, just I love the franchise. I love what they're doing. It's so great. Super into it, like that, and it's like gonna be a big part of the decorations this year. So I want to try to create a drink that was themed to that as best that I could, which I don't really do like cocktails or like making drinks on the show or that type of thing. It's really just like me drinking whiskey, and I get that. That's what I like to do. So that's usually what we do. But so this year I was playing around with a couple different things, and I tried this one that was, I think it's called like Vampire's Blood is the name of the drink. It's a light rum, a little bit of triple sec, and like the rest of it is bulk like pineapple juice, and then just like strawberry syrup on the top to like give it like a red type of thing. And that, like, it was cool. I put a maraschino cherry on top just to kind of like make it look like a red balloon like Pennywise would have, and it was decent. Really, like, it's more effort, but not enough better taste than just a Malibu and pineapple. So it's part of the Instagram picture. It's the one on the left. If you look it up, we of course are Getting Biblical on Instagram, and yeah, it wasn't too. I liked how the maraschino cherry shone on there, so it looked like the red balloon floating in it. But the rest of it, lackluster. Not a big fan. The other idea I had was to try and make like a White Russian, but instead of the Kahlua, the dark part of the White Russian, to do more of like a strawberry or whatever, so that the strawberry flavoring would mix with the cream that you put on top, and then a white section on the top, and then the red down below, and then have the cherry and everything on top there. And that actually came out really good. Did a couple different versions of it. I couldn't find strawberry liqueur, but I found raspberry liqueur and did not like that. Apparently not a fan. Played around with some stuff. So we found some whipped cream flavored vodka and then a grenadine mixed. It was like 2 ounces of the whipped cream flavored vodka and like half an ounce to 1 ounce, 3/4 of an ounce, I don't know, of grenadine. Mix that together, throw that over the ice, fill up the rest with cream, and then poured some of the strawberry syrup on top. Let it kind of soak through. Of course, you throw that maraschino cherry on top to be the red balloon, and it creates a really cool layered, like, white on top, red on the bottom, red floating down from the strawberry syrup and everything. And I think that's the drink that we're gonna go for my party. And I looked up online and tried to find something similar, like if I had just, like, invented, quote unquote, something that already existed, that type of thing. And I don't see anybody that's doing that type of thing. Maybe because it's shit, I don't know. Tasted pretty good to me. I thought the cream with the grenadine and then the strawberry syrup floating on top, once you mix it up a bit, actually tasted pretty delicious. Not a ton of alcohol. Like, yeah, like there's like 2 shots of vodka in there, but like with the cream on there and with all the syrup and the sugar, it's really just like a shot with extra steps. Like, it's not a really like does not compare. I'm not super proud of it or whatever. Like, it's not like an old fashioned or Manhattan or I don't even. Those are probably even bad examples in the gist of things, but it's not some grandiose thing. It's something I got to make really quick at a party when someone walks up and like, hey, can you make me a Pennywise? And like, boom, here we go. So that's the drink that I made for the party coming up, and that's what I'm drinking today. It's on Instagram. You can check it out. But that's it. That's what we're drinking today. No big whiskey story this week. Anyways, so let's get back to Bible stories. All right, so the first story that I want to talk about, or I guess the number 5 on the list of famous zombies in the Bible, Right, and again, did I say this already? We're not talking about actual zombies. We're using it loosely. Jesus wasn't trying to like eat brains, right? He was trying to save souls or something. It like, so I mean it very loosely. So don't send me any hate mail or whatever. But on the list, the first one we're gonna cover is Jesus, because he did his ministry, and the government hated him, and then they crucified him. They had him on the cross. He died. He was buried in the cave tomb, whatever, and then like it took several dudes to like roll the big stone over the mouth of the tomb, cave, whatever that he was buried in. And then 3 days later, which is past the acceptable time frame of people coming back to life, like according to Bible ideas, terms, whatever. After 3 days, Jesus rose back up. The huge stone was rolled away by angels, and like Gandalf the White came coming back with more powers and was able to walk through walls and whatever, and started taking care of business to set up the rest of Christianity, I guess, and everything that he did. So that's a whole big thing. But actually, kind of like, even though I'm putting him as number 5 or whatever on the list, I'm not actually talking about him per se, because yes, he did come back from the dead. But what's extra special about Jesus' resurrection is, as far as this Halloween episode goes, is that not only did he himself come back from the dead, but when he died, in the book of Matthew, it says that a whole horde of long dead prophets, like Old Testament guys, dead and buried, right, since back then, those old prophets all raised up when Jesus died and started walking around, which is craziness. And I wish that we could get director's commentary or whatever about what actually was happening here. They don't really talk about it. It's like a passive verse, like, oh, and then all the prophets of old like woke up and walked around and like, oh, cool, like, that's just a thing that happened. Like, where did they die a week later? Did they live out full lives? How much longer do you get after that? What's happening here? And we don't know. It doesn't tell us, but it's really fucking cool. I think I might have talked about that last year. I can't remember exactly. It's been a long time, and I did not look at old show notes. So, if you're getting a double dipper there, I apologize, but not really. Whatever. Number two, Lazarus. Okay, this is found in John chapter 11, still in the New Testament. So before Jesus himself died, back when he was back on his ministry, Lazarus was one of Jesus's closest friends. Jesus had disciples, his entourage, right? But Lazarus and his sisters, Mary and Martha, they were all like best friends, BFFs. And so Jesus is at the height of his ministry, and certain people, politicians, whatever, they wanted him dead, right? This is like leading up to the crucifixion. But he gets word that one of his best friends, his buddy Lazarus, has died. His sister runs up and tells him, actually. And he tells his disciples, it's the SpongeBob meme, So Jesus is chilling, and who is it? Like Mary, I think. Mary runs up. Maybe it's Martha. I can't remember. Mary runs up, and she's like, "Oh my God, Jesus, Lazarus has died." Jesus like puts his hands on the armrest of the chair and like, I'm gonna head out. Like that's really what he did. He's like I gotta go help out my boy Lazarus who just died. And his disciples were all like, "Nah, dog, you can't go there. You're gonna get arrested or killed or worse or whatever." And Jesus is like, nah, I love Lazarus. He's like a brother to me. I gotta bring him back from the dead. We got to go. So they roll out. And so when he gets there, over to where Lazarus was, it was not close, right? It took a lot of effort to get over there. When he shows up, Lazarus has been dead for several days. He was already dead in the tomb, coffin, whatever you want to call it. Tomb, I guess, but tomb with a giant stone in front of it, kind of like what Jesus got buried in, I guess, in the previous number 5 on the list. Anyway, so he starts to tell the people, roll away the stone in front of the tomb. We're gonna bring him back, or we're gonna do something. And then Martha is like, whoa, what are you doing? And I'm gonna quote this real quick. John chapter 11, verse 39. Quote unquote, quote, start quote, begin quote. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, Jesus, Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. 4 days. He's been dead for 4 days. By this time there will be a stench. He's been dead for 4 days. Jesus didn't care. He was not leaving his boy, Lazarus, to stay dead like that. So he yells out to the grave, to the tomb, Lazarus, come out. And in verse 44, it says, he who was dead came out, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with cloth. So it's actually a mummy story, not a zombie story. He literally came walking out fully wrapped up in cloth wrappings or whatever, hands in front of each, whatever, face all wrapped up. So Lazarus was the biblical mummy, the best we got. But he just walked out. He just, which is impressive all by itself. And he was even wrapped up like a mummy. So it was a great miracle, Jesus. You did good. You did good. So, number 3, the widow's son. Also in the New Testament, also a Jesus thing. Luke chapter 7. I said that like Mario. It's a me, Mario. All right, so next we're talking about the widow's son in Luke chapter 7. So, this is a pretty simple story, not a big deal, but it would be a crazy thing to have watched, to have seen firsthand. So in this certain city, this widow's son died. And there was a whole funeral procession going on. He died. He was in his coffin. He was being carried around by the pallbearers. The coffin was up on their shoulders, or however they carry that, marching him, I guess, to the grave site. And I don't know if they were right at the grave or how close they were, but he was up on people's shoulders, being held in the air in his coffin. And Jesus is just strolling through the city, blessing people, talking to people, doing Jesus things. And he sees this funeral happening. He sees the coffin being carried by dudes, and he sees the boy's mother, the widow, beside herself with grief. And Jesus takes compassion on her, and he goes over to the widow and says, "Don't cry." And then he keeps on walking, and he walks through the crowd. He's like, "Excuse me, pardon me, excuse me," whatever, going through the funeral crowd. And he gets up to where the coffin is and the pallbearers and everything, and he reaches up and just puts his hand firmly on the coffin. And I don't know if he's right in front of the whole thing and where everyone can see him. He's clearly not in the back, just trying to graze it. He probably stood right in the front. I don't know, but he walks up and he just boom, hand plant on the coffin, and all the pallbearers just stop. They're like, "What the hell is this? Who are you, man? What are you doing?" And then Jesus says, "Young man, I tell you, arise." And the boy sat up in his coffin. If you watch wrestling, I don't very much, but I used to when I was young. The Undertaker, just 90-degree angle sit. Now I'm sitting where I was dead. I guess there wasn't a lid on it, right? It was an open casket funeral type thing. I don't know. So he just was able to sit up in the coffin, and the kid just starts talking. And the Bible doesn't say what he says. All it says is that he started talking. I'm sure he was saying something like, why am I being carried in this box towards that big hole in the ground? And why are there so many shovels nearby? Like what was about to happen? I'm so glad that I woke up. That type of thing. I don't know. But it was a big deal. Everyone in town saw it. Everyone was amazed. And it looked really great on Jesus's Messiah resume or whatever, right? You know, like a lot of people started believing that day. So that's the story of the time that Jesus nonchalantly stopped a funeral to raise someone from the dead. All right, number 4, Eutychus. Eutychus, I love this one. So New Testament, the book of Acts, chapter 20, the Apostle Paul is out preaching to people, and I guess he gets on like on a roll, right? He like starts going, they break bread, they're hanging out, whatever. It's like I'm ready for a sermon. I'm ready to start talking about God and Jesus and things. So he starts going, and he starts talking, and keeps talking and keeps talking and keeps talking. A lot like I do, I guess, maybe. But he keeps doing that, and he keeps preaching. And the Bible says specifically he's preaching and preaching until midnight, right? He keeps going. I think he even says even until midnight or something like that. Like, it's not, he didn't like stop at midnight. He just like was going and going and going. Heck of a sermon, if I tell you. So people are listening to this sermon, and this kid, Eutychus, he's sitting like and listening, right? He's doing his best. He's like, oh, I think this is important. I should be involved. So he's sitting on a window ledge because he wants to get a better view, and he's like 3 floors up, and he's listening to Paul preach. But Paul just keeps on preaching. And he keeps going on. And the boy, maybe he was like super interested. I don't know. But he just got exhausted because, you know, you can only listen to so much preaching, I think, right? We're human beings, for God's sake. So, the kid gets exhausted, or maybe because, you know, Paul kept rambling. The kid originally was interested and then got super bored. I'm not quite sure which one, but either way, Eutychus, this poor kid, falls asleep during the sermon. And, you know, it's something I'm very personally familiar with. I've done that more times than I can count, which it is what it is. I was going to say, like, oh, much to my chagrin, or I'm so sorry. But you know what? It is what it is. I slept a lot during church. It's fine. But unfortunately, because he was sitting on the 3rd floor window when he dozed off, he fell out the window and fell to the ground and like broke his neck or something. Like he died. He fell down and died on the spot. So, and everyone there like heard the thump, like saw him fall down, whatever. And they're like, oh shit. And then Paul, who was preaching, like saw it happen because he's the one from the vantage point, right? He's looking out in the crowd and he just sees this little boy fall out a window. So Paul's like, oh shit. And Paul runs over and he grabs the little boy and he like holds him in his arms and he goes, it's okay, everybody. He's fine, right? Which sounds like bullshit. Like doesn't sound like anything. But sure enough, the boy stopped being dead. Right? That's an adequate way to say it. He stopped being dead. He came back to life, and everyone was super excited. And there you go. That was one of the times that Paul brought someone back to life. That's the story of how Paul, whichever way you want to put it, Paul either talked someone to death or he bored someone to death. I'm okay with either. Both answers are acceptable in my book, but he had to revive him to save face and save things, whatever. But yeah, Eutychus, it's a great story. Number 5. This is found in the Old Testament. This is the only one of the whole list that is in the Old Testament, and it is in 2 Kings chapter 13. So we haven't really delved into it, but one of the like greatest prophets of the Old Testament was this guy Elijah. And Elijah had an apprentice prophet or whatever, a successor named Elisha. So Elisha, this major prophet of God, did a bunch of things. lots of stuff, and we're going to talk about a lot of them later. Can't wait to get into it, but we're skipping all over that and going straight to the end where he gets sick and dies, unfortunately. Right? So, great prophet, did a lot of amazing things. He dead now. For the purposes of this story. Rest in peace. So he's put in this tomb, his final resting place, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's the backstory of what you need to know for the rest of the story. So he dies, some time passes, and then some other guy who we don't even know his name. The Bible does not say his name. Some dude dies, and during his funeral, they are in the process of digging up his grave to bury him, right? Like, I mean, he had friends. There were people there. They were all trying to like make a good effort on, like honoring the dead and that type of thing. But so they're in the process of all that, and his dead body's nearby and whatever. They're trying to dig the hole for him. So they look up and they see a band of Moabites. Those are the bad guys charging in to attack everyone. Everyone at the funeral, like they're digging this no-name guy's grave. They look up, and then just a horde of the Moabites come in to kill him. So whoever was in charge of this funeral is like, fuck it. We got to run. Throw this guy into that tomb over there, and let's run for our lives. What they didn't know, that this tomb just happens to be Elisha's tomb, right? The guy I was just talking about. So they throw him in the tomb, don't realize that is Elisha's tomb, and when the dead body, like I think it happens in slow motion, right? All the good stuff happens in slow motion. They just like alley-oop, they just like toss his dead body into the tomb. And it happens to land on Elisha the prophet's bones. And instantly, upon hitting Elisha's bones, this dead body of this unnamed guy jumps back to life, springs off the the bones of the dead body or whatever, and like lands on the floor and is back alive. He's back alive. He's there. And which is so wild, right? That's so crazy. I don't know, like I don't know how the coming back to life process works exactly, like what it feels like. I don't know how long it is until you gain awareness of what's happening when you come back from the dead. Is it like waking up with a hangover? Like, are you super groggy? Like, are all your like synapses and neural connections like trying to like reconnect or refit them? Or is it like super great and you just woke up after 12 hours of the most like deepest sleep you've ever had? Like, I don't know. I don't know which one of those versions of waking up when you were dead it feels like. But I like, so here's the morbid part of me, right? This is a Halloween episode. It's fine. Can you just imagine, like, they alley-oop, like, his body into the tomb, and they're like, run! And they're like alley-oop, run. Like, boom! Like bolt, because the Dothraki are, like, coming, and they're going to fuck us up. We got to go. We are not soldiers. We are funeral people. We are pallbearers. We are not here to fight. We're here to carry caskets. Like, that's what our job is. This is not part of my commission. So they all start running, and this poor guy just lands on the bones of Elisha and then springs back to life. And he's like, huh? Like, where am I? What's happening? And like, why am I in this tomb? And I imagine this is not in the Bible. This isn't specifically talked about. I just like my morbid imagination. Like, he just like stumbles out and walks out of Elisha's tomb. Like, I guess there was a funeral here. Was it my funeral? I was dead and now I'm back alive. Praise be. And as he says that, the Moabites come on him and murder him all the same. So he dies again right then and there. Is a horrible thing to think about, but I can't help myself. So, but we don't know what happens after him. But that's the story of the time that the holiness, the sheer holiness power of God's prophet Elisha, even his bones after he was dead, still had so much God-loving whatever holiness inside that they brought a man back to life just by touching them. Great story. Great story. Anyway, so that's my show. That's Halloween 2.0 or whatever for episode 2. My 5 favorite people coming back from the dead in the Bible stories. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you have a fantastic Halloween. Dress up, be creative, have fun. Have a great week. Cheers.